Gasoline engines. The main gasoline engines of the pre-restyling Volvo S60 of the second generation were 1.6 and 2.0-liter turbo engines from Ford. These engines are 4-cylinder, with direct injection. The famous EcoBoost. During the warranty period and after it ended, they died like flies. In their defense, let's say that these engines suffered from both poor fuel and an inadequately long service interval, 20,000 kilometers. In both engines the pistons were falling apart, i.e. the piston baffles broke off. All this was accompanied by triple knocking in one of the cylinders and the appearance of scoring. This was due to detonation caused by both poor quality fuel and calcium additives in the engine oil. In general, it all ended with replacing the cylinder block. The 1.6-liter engine could expel all the oil through worn seals and the turbocharger shaft. After this, in the absence of lubrication, the motor turned one of the connecting rod bearings, but for some owners, these engines live happily ever after. The main thing here is to buy fuel at trusted gas stations, reduce the oil change interval recommended by the manufacturer by half or even 3 times, and keep the radiators clean. In general, both Ford gasoline engines, as practice shows, leave the chat without much warning and even several thousand kilometers after changing the oil. As they say, live their own lives. 2.5 T5 B4204T5 253 horsepower 2.0 B4204T8 180 horsepower 2.0 B4204T9 214 horsepower. The second generation Volvo S60 carried excellent gasoline 5s of its own design. From the very beginning of sales of this model, a very playful Swedish turbo engine was installed under the hood of the T5 version, and since 2014. Its 2-liter version has appeared on the restyled S60. There is distributed injection, 1 turbocharger. Remember, Volvo's 5-cylinder engine is good. Very durable engines that do not require scrupulous maintenance. Just don't skimp, and these units will last more than 500,000 kilometers. Simply changing the oil and filter every 10,000 kilometers will put off problems with phase shifters and clogging of the crankcase ventilation system for a long time. If fogging suddenly appears on the camshaft seals, then this is a sign of increased pressure in the crankcase, or you, the previous owner, managed to drive this engine with a low oil level. Don't allow such problems. Change the timing belt every 120,000 kilometers or earlier, and inline Swedish 5s will not require any repairs. 3.0 T6 B6304T3 329 horsepower, 3.0 T6 B6304T4 304 horsepower, 3.0 T6 B6304T5 351 horsepower. Until the 2016 model year, the Volvo S60 was equipped with a proprietary inline turbo 6. This motor also has decent reliability. Even with merciless operation with chip tuning, it lasts more than 300,000 kilometers. It is clear that such a car can only dream of a quiet ride. Ford's Ford said goodbye to the Volvo S60 in 2013. Gradually, the company began to abandon inline 5s. They began to be replaced by completely new engines of the new VEA modular architecture. They have nothing in common with Ford engines. They resemble exactly the 5s. They also do not have a separate valve cover. It is light alloy and presses the camshafts from above, i.e. is the top of their bed. By the way, according to the old Volvo tradition, there are no hydraulic compensators in the valve drive. Timing belt drive, 1 or even 2 turbines, direct fuel injection. Electric cooling system pump. The steering rack with VEA motors is also electric, and the dipstick is also electronic. 1.5 T2 B4154T5 122 horsepower 1.5 T2 B4154T4 152 horsepower. The youngest engine from the VEA family is a 1.5-liter. Let us repeat once again that this is not EcoBoost. Volvo S60s are practically not found with him, and these will be cars imported from Europe. 2.0 T3 B4204T37 152 horsepower, 2.0 T4 B4204T19 190 horsepower, 2.0 T B4204T6 203 horsepower, 2.0 T5 B4204T11 245 horsepower, 2.0 T6 B4204T9 306 horsepower, 2.0 T6 B4204T43 367 horsepower. Its 2-liter version is much more common. This unit is found in all kinds of versions with power starting from 152 horsepower up to 367 horsepower with Polestar chip. These engines are also called Drive E. They are also installed on the 3rd generation S60. And these are very decent engines, although they did not immediately earn the right to be called that. In the first years of production, they were upset by increased oil consumption. This was due to an initially unsuccessful oil separator in the crankcase ventilation system. And even before 2016, these engines had a problem with coking of the oil scraper rings, because the oil drain holes in the pistons were very small. Owners whose cars began to greedily devour oil had to install new pistons at their own expense. In general, Volvo's new 4s have been very good since 2016. Diesel engines. 1.6 D4162T 114 horsepower. The junior turbodiesel under the Volvo hood is the French 1.6 HDI in its 8-valve version. Good motor. 2.0 D3 D5204T7 136 horsepower. 2.0 D4 D5204T3 163 horsepower, 2.0 D4 D5204T5 181 horsepower, 2.0 D4 D5204T21 190 horsepower, 2.4 D4 D5204T11 215 horsepower, 2.4 D4 D5204T15 215 horsepower. The second generation Volvo S60 wore out the inline 5 and said goodbye to them at the turn of 2014. These are cool engines with excellent service life. But it is worth noting that there have been cases of cracks appearing between the cylinders. This applies mainly to the 215 horsepower versions. The problem is related to crook chip tuning and engine overheating. Let us remind you once again about the need to keep the sandwich of radiators and intercooler clean. 2.0 D2 D4204T8, T20 120 horsepower, 2.0 D3 D4204T4, T9 150 horsepower, 2.0 D4 D4204T5 181 horsepower, 2.0 D4 D4204T14 190 horsepower, 2.0 D5 D4204T11 224 horsepower. The 5s were replaced by the 4s of the VEA modular architecture. The pump of these engines is driven by a timing belt. The oil pump has variable capacity. There is no dipstick. Instead, there is an electronic sensor. In the first years of production, these engines took part in a recall campaign associated with the likelihood of melting the intake manifold and even fire. The culprit is the EGR valve. It was replaced on 500,000 Volvos with this engine, produced from 2013 to 2019. Otherwise, there are no problems with the new Volvo diesel 4s yet. MPS 6/6 DCT450. The second generation Volvo S60 with non-native engines was equipped with an MPS 6 robotic, pre-selective transmission. Non-native engines are Ford gasoline turbo engines with a displacement of 1.6 and 2.0 liters, as well as a French turbo diesel with a displacement of 1.6 liters. The Volvo S60 was equipped with the MPS 6 transmission with a wet clutch. It is called 6 DCT450. The clutch is wet because its discs are immersed in transmission oil, which serves the valve body. Consequently, all dust from the clutch friction linings gets into the oil and valve body. To prevent the 6 DCT450 pre-selective robot from undergoing major overhaul prematurely, you need to change the oil in it every 40,000 kilometers, while changing the external filter. They also recommend installing an external radiator and a cooler thermostat. But anyway, by 120,000 kilometers this transmission will begin to mope. There are many weak points here. The clutch works with a dual-mass flywheel. It is located inside the 6 DCT450 transmission. The flywheel damper springs simply wear out themselves and wear out their seats in the cage. Because of this, steel dust appears in the oil, clutch runout occurs, which leads to oil leakage through the oil seal on the clutch cover. Before this, the wet MPS 6 will begin to kick when changing gears. One of the gears may also disappear, and related errors will appear. In this case, replacing worn main solenoids can help. By the way, to replace them you do not need to remove and disassemble the transmission. They are accessible after removing the vertical tray. In general, the 6 DCT450 pre-selective is not a gift. Delicate and expensive to repair. Aisin TF80SC. Let's remember again Volvo's capable turbo petrol 5s. They are also good because they are paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission Aisin TF80SC. Let's return to cooling again. Install an external radiator for TF. Update it every 80,000 kilometers or more often. In this case, Aisin will cover more than 250,000 kilometers before overhaul. Aisin TF71SC, a slightly different 6-speed, was available with a 1.5-liter turbo engine. Automatic transmission Aisin TF71SC. It came with a bad cooling system from the factory. There is no way to do this without a separate radiator. ATG81SC. And with the new 2-liter gasoline and diesel engines, 8-speed is available. Transmission ATG81SC. This automatic was created for the Lexus RX and was tested on it. Very soon this transmission appeared on BMW X1, X2, Mini, Toyota, Volkswagen, Opel, Geely Dagela and all modern Volvos. And this is a very decent, reliable classic transmission. The second generation Volvo S60 is equipped with parking brake servos. After 5 to 7 years, servos fail because dirt and water get into their gearbox. They are easily removed from the calipers. If dirt has led to serious wear of the gears, then the gearboxes will have to be replaced with new ones. The front wheels are suspended on McPherson struts with the usual wishbones. By the way, almost all parts for the front suspension are suitable for Mondeo 4, S-Max and Galaxy 2. The weak point in these levers is their rear silent blocks. They cracked after a mileage of 120,000 kilometers. As the cracks grow, the driver begins to feel the front suspension wobble while driving and especially when braking. Original silent blocks in a steel cage sell for $150. Good substitutes are 3 times cheaper. The ball joint is sold only as an assembly with a lever and silent block, $300. But the standard ball joint can be removed by sawing off its rivets. Non-original ball joints along with 3 bolts for fastening are sold for $40, $60 and even cheaper. The support bearings $31,277,826 of the front shock absorber struts are poorly protected from dirt and moisture. This mixture makes them crunchy at 120,000 kilometers. For the original you will have to pay about $100. Substitutes are 2 to 3 times cheaper. Tie rods and ends are sold separately. The original costs quite inhumanely, $130 and $200. Stabilizer struts last 50,000 kilometers. It all depends on the roads, wheel size and frequency of parking on curbs. The original will cost $50. The front wheel bearings on some Volvo S60s began to hum after 150,000 kilometers. The original hub will cost $440. A replacement is 3 times cheaper. The rear suspension has 4 arms for each wheel, parts like those in the aforementioned Fords. The weak point here is the front silent block of the trailing arm. The silent block is sold separately for $250. Good manufacturers of spare parts sell a repair kit with 2 silent blocks and mounting screws at half the price. The shortest rear suspension arm does not last long. Under the Volvo brand it costs $130. The non-original version is 5 times cheaper. The second generation Volvo S60 could be equipped with electronically controlled 4C shock absorbers. They were produced by Monroe. If such shock absorbers leak, then you will have to pay $620 for the front and $700 for the rear. Everything is fine with the body of the Volvo S60. It doesn't rust at all. But on cars with high mileage, paint may chip off the edges of the wheel arches. Paint may also fall off the doors from under the door handles. In general, it's hard to find fault with Swedish metal. Although there are exceptions to every rule, if the car is equipped with a servo drive for folding mirrors, then one day it will require attention. In some cases, you can get by adding lubricant to the folding mechanism. But if road reagents cause corrosion of the silumen brackets, then you will have to look for a used mirror or donor spare parts for your mirror. Headlights on pre-restyling cars often sweat because moisture gets into them through a thin layer of sealant. The adhesive layer is especially thin at the top and at the corner of the headlight closer to the fender. To solve the problem efficiently, it is better to unstick the headlight and add a thicker layer of sealant. Door locks on Volvo S60 sometimes stop working because a simple motor in their mechanism fails. There is no need to buy new or used locks. You can buy a new motor from China and change it. The lock body is quite easy to disassemble, but if one of the doors stops responding to the outside handle, but still opens from the passenger compartment, then you will need to replace the broken cable. This is also not such a rare problem with Volvo S60 doors. On cars with keyless entry, wires break near the connectors or water gets into them, after which the system stops working. We have to look for a used handle with a fragment of the wiring to it. Let's take a look at the windshield. It wears out quite quickly under the influence of pebbles and other abrasives. On restyled cars there is a fully heated windshield, i.e. with heating threads. Such glass costs at least $500 for a non-original one. If, while filling the tank with fuel, the refueling nozzle begins to shoot constantly, then removing and purging the adsorber that catches fuel vapor will help. The adsorber is installed on the bottom near the tank. You can also blow out or replace with a new filter, 31,478,176, located at the end of the tank vent tube. In the Volvo S60 interior, a whistling sound from the fan motor appears over time. You can reach it through the glove compartment and lubricate it. But lubricant is unlikely to help for long. The fan motor will still have to be changed. Only this will eliminate its squeaking. A non-original fan from Hella will cost $200. The fan can throw up another surprise. In hot weather it can freeze at high speeds and will not turn off even after stopping the engine. To turn off the fan, you need to remove its fuse, which is located in the block under the hood in the bottom row, position 11. Well, the culprit for the constant operation of the fan is the thermistor, 30,767,040, of the ventilation system. It will have to be replaced with a new one. The original costs more than $200, and a good replacement from a conveyor supplier is not much cheaper. If the car is equipped with a sunroof, then every couple of years you need to clean the drainage pipes that extend from it down through the body pillars. If the drains become clogged, water will flow past them. As a result, the linings on the racks will get wet and then water will spill onto the mats. It can damage the electronic components located under the carpets at the front. If the transmission mode indicator on the automatic transmission selector stops working, then the broken cable will need to be replaced or repaired. Radiator fans on Volvo S60 one day stop functioning without any warning. If they turn off and do not turn on, then most likely the commutator brushes of the electric motors are worn out. An experienced auto electrician will be able to select and replace brushes, and if the fans turn on every once in a while, then the problem lies in the control unit, which is installed on the back of the fan cassette. Sometimes it can be repaired. A new unit will cost $470. A good replacement will cost $190. Radiators, especially the space between the condenser and the main radiator, need to be kept clean. If everything there is clogged with dust and fluff, then it is better to remove the entire cassette, thoroughly wash the outside and replace the coolant. A serviceable and fresh cooling system on the Volvo S60 is the key to the long life of its engines, especially gasoline ones, and in order for the automatic transmission to work for a long time, it is better to install a separate radiator to cool the transmission fluid. During the warranty period, the upper hose of the air conditioning compressor, 31,436,536, was replaced on the second-generation Volvo S60. Due to the standard hose under the hood, a loud buzzing sound appeared while the compressor was running. It is the modified tube that helps eliminate extraneous sound. On pre-restyling Volvo S60 second generation with old engines, a hydraulic steering rack is installed, but its pump is electric and is located in the oil reservoir. If you do not periodically update the power steering fluid, the pump and control unit may fail. You can separately replace the tank with a non-original one, Hake 3012 E-Beak, if a lot of debris has accumulated in the old one and it is not washed out. Especially if the coarse mesh in the tank becomes clogged. An original pump costs a lot of money, a non-original one costs about $700.